morning, everyone. And thanks for being here today. Also, thanks as well to my Wildrose MLAs, Jeff Wilson from Calgary-Shaw and Rob Anderson from Airdrie, who are here. We also have a couple of candidates, Rimbey Rocky Mountain House Sundry candidate Jason Nixon, as well as Calgary-Klein candidate Jeremy Nixon. But we are here to announce one of our two new candidates. Our next candidate for Calgary West will be announcing at 2:30 p.m. tomorrow, and the media advisory will go out a little bit later today. But I do want to thank you for joining us here today to officially kick off our campaign in Calgary-Foothills. I have to admit that we've been feeling a little bit like a sprinter crouched over the starting line for the last few days, all keyed up, just waiting for the starting gun to fire. But now that Premier Prentice has finally chosen a constituency, it's off to the races. So here we go. But before I introduce the woman beside me who will take him on, I just want to share a few thoughts on our new Premier. I think we can presume, based on his cryptic non-answers and his long delays in finally announcing this by-election, that he's not exactly looking forward to facing Alberta voters. This isn't a leader who is confident that the government that he leads, and it's also a leader who does not want to run on its record, and with good reason. The government's record is appalling. On everything from spending to healthcare wait times to classroom space to caring for our most vulnerable, the PC record is one of failure. Every day we're spiraling deeper and deeper into debt. Wait times for key treatments and procedures are getting longer. Classrooms keep on getting more crowded, and despite the litany of promises for shiny new schools, all we seem to ever get are signs. And our most vulnerable, our seniors, children, and those with disabilities keep getting left further and further behind. And let's not forget the scandal, the endless parade of scandal, and another one in the media today. In 2 short years, the PCs have taken entitlements to unprecedented heights and plunged public confidence to unprecedented lows. Airplanes, expense claims, illegal donations, first-class flights, 5-star hotels. This string of ethical and entitlement scandals brought down yet another premier and put a black eye not only on the PC party, but on our province. This is the PC record. It is now Jim Prentice's record. No wonder he is afraid of it. He's afraid of it because Albertans have had enough of it. And now that Jim Prentice is finally going to put his name on a ballot, it's time to send him and his entire PC government a message that we will no longer put up with their mismanagement and their entitlement, a message that we demand better from our leaders, and a message that there is finally a party and a team of candidates that put Alberta's interests first. To my right is the woman who's going to do that. It is my privilege to introduce you to Wildrose candidate for Calgary-Foothills, Ms. Kathy Macdonald. Kathy. Kathy is a lifelong Albertan, and as a 25-year veteran of the Calgary Police Service, she has spent her entire career in public service. During her time in the force, Kathy distinguished herself as an international leader in cybercrime prevention. She spearheaded the force's public awareness efforts against the online exploitation of children, identity theft, and cybersecurity. She has been recognized by the International Center for Criminal Law Reform and Criminal Justice Policy for her work on identity theft, as well as the American Bar Association for her work on school bullying. Most recently, she was invited to take part in NATO's Science for Peace and Security program for the protection of critical infrastructure. Kathy's also a parent. Together with her husband, Wade, a teacher with the Calgary Catholic School District, they have raised a daughter in Calgary who now attends Alberta's College of Art and Design. Along with her passion for justice, her years of experience, and her long history in Alberta, Kathy brings to the table a deep desire to see change in Alberta. And where better place to start than right here in Calgary-Foothills, taking on the Premier himself. Ladies and gentlemen, the woman who is going to help us send Jim Prentice and his government a message, Ms. Kathy Macdonald.
Well, thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Danielle, for that kind introduction. I'm Kathy Macdonald, and I am so proud to be the Wildrose candidate for the constituency of Calgary-Foothills. As Danielle said, I am a lifelong Albertan. Growing up, my family lived in Ponoka. I was born in Ponoka. I lived in Camrose, Drumheller, Grand Prairie, and we finally came back to Calgary, where I've been living in Northwest Calgary for over 40 years. There isn't much of Alberta that I haven't seen. My father was an RCMP officer, and he taught me what it truly meant to serve the public, to do a job that puts others ahead of yourself, sometimes at great risk of danger and harm. From him, I learned that public service is a noble calling. I still believe that to this day. He instilled in me the values of sacrifice, selflessness, and humility. These are the values I brought to work every day for 25 years with the Calgary Police Service. And they're the values that I bring to this race. I, like so many Albertans, have been disappointed and frustrated with how the PC government has behaved over the last several years. Instead of serving the public with humility and respect, the PCs have been arrogant and out of touch. As a former police officer, I understand the importance of ethics and high standards. And I'm sorry, but the last 2 weeks of good news announcements by the new Premier do not make up for the last several years of government's entitlement and mismanagement. This is certainly something I'm hearing from my neighbors and from those that I've been speaking to in this constituency so far. And it's a major reason I'm running in this race. However, there are other reasons, including because we need more schools. My husband is a teacher, and he gives me a first-hand perspective on the needs and pressures in the schools. And I've presented in schools throughout the city and in this constituency, and I know there is a serious shortage of schools, and that has to be addressed. We also need resources for the teachers and assistants in the classrooms, and I intend to be a strong voice in this regard. I would also like to be a strong voice for healthcare, getting rid of the long waiting lines to get to surgery, access to family doctors, and in particular, taking care of seniors' health. Coincidentally, today would have been my mother's 90th birthday. I experienced firsthand our broken healthcare system in taking care of her in later years. Finally, on a personal note that is dear to my heart, I believe this government has not done enough to curb the online exploitation of children, and more resources are needed to protect our kids when they are online. Albertans need to have integrity in government restored and their faith in government renewed. And that's why I'm running for Danielle Smith and the Wildrose Party. I know what I'm up against. I know this fight will not be easy. The PCs have represented Foothills since I moved to Calgary in 1971. That's 43 years in a row. On top of that, I'm taking on the Premier. But I've never been afraid of a challenge. Over the next 27 days, me and my team will be out every day, working hard for every vote. I ask the constituents of Calgary-Foothills to send the PCs a message by electing me to join Danielle Smith and the Wildrose team at the Alberta Legislature. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And so with that, we'd be happy to take any questions. Just let me know if you want to direct them to me or to Kathy.
Could I ask Ms. Macdonald are you a current CPS member, taking how do you handle that?
Oh, that's a really good question. Actually, I retired last June from the Calgary Police Service after 25 years.
Any other questions? Sure.
Yes.
Have you ever ran for political office before?
I never have.
And maybe let's talk a little about this challenge. How tough is it going to be?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting in that I am not a seasoned career politician. However, I have 25 years of community and public service, and I think those skills translate very well into public office. Listening to constituents, being there and being accessible and helping others. And that's exactly what I would like to do for the constituents of Calgary-Foothills, be their voice in the Alberta Legislature.
Question for Danielle, maybe just talk a little bit about the selection process.
Sure. Well, as you know, we do tend to prefer a democratic process that allows our local constituency associations to elect members. However, we have a 30-day process for candidate selection, so if we started it when we found out that this was going to be the riding open, our candidate selection process wouldn't be over before the by-election was. So in our party constitution, our executive committee has allowed me the opportunity to appoint in the event that we do have surprise elections. So I've exercised that. We did a thorough candidate vetting. We had a number of different individuals that we had been considering, not only for this riding, but also for Calgary West. And last evening, I convened an executive committee meeting to announce and get their approval of both of the candidates that I'd chosen to select. Our rules allow for me to do an appointment with the consultation with the local constituency association, and they knew that we were going in this direction, but then to have it affirmed by the executive committee. So that's what we did. And I think Kathy's resume speaks for itself. I mean, 25-year veteran of the Calgary Police Service, bringing, of course, to the table all of the incredible expertise that she has on cyberbullying, identity theft, protection of critical infrastructure. I just can't think of a better candidate to represent this riding. Plus, the fact that she has the experience with her husband being close to the school system as a teacher. We know that in this riding, the issues related to burgeoning classroom sizes and the need for new schools is one of the top issues in the riding. Plus, as well, the fact that she's got a personal experience with the healthcare system, which needs an awful lot of care and attention, and a huge advocate. So those are all of the reasons why we chose Kathy as the candidate.
What would you say to those who say that there should be some kind of political courtesy to ensure that the Premier gets a place in the legislature?
Well, I suppose that we could say the Premier should have shown some political courtesy in telling us which riding he was going to run in prior to announcing the by-election. So I have to say courtesy has been in very short supply with the PCs. They don't respect protocol. They don't respect the opposition. They have bad practices in the legislature. And quite frankly, if they want to be treated with courtesy, it starts with them first. So we believe that a Premier who waltzed in to the Premier's chair with virtually no challenge, no ideas, no policy platform, should face a pretty tough challenge if he wants to be Premier of this province. And if the PCs weren't willing to do that through their leadership race, then we're willing to do it through the by-election. And that's why we're running Kathy Macdonald against him.
Could you say that more about the news today that the Auditor General doesn't like same-source contracts, so they think that they want to...
I'd be happy to answer that. Let me just see if there's anyone else who has any questions about Kathy or about our campaign here.
Yeah, so why not run somebody who's experienced, somebody who has more years of in politics in Alberta in this riding?
I would say that there's lots of ways to get experience in public service. And Kathy has 25 years in Calgary Police Service, working with the community, talking to community schools, acting as an advocate for the individuals who need the help of the Calgary Police Service. So just, I don't think that the only way to get public service is to be elected. And in fact, one of the things that I value about my Wildrose caucus team is the fact that they come from a whole variety of walks of life. And they don't want to be career politicians. They want to get in there and they want to fix a few things and then get back out into the private sector. And I would say that Kathy is very much along the lines of the kind of candidates that we're going to continue to recruit to run for Wildrose.
If the Wildrose doesn't manage to win any of these 4 by-elections, where do you think that might leave your leadership?
Why don't you talk to me on October 28th, because I can tell you we're intending to win these by-elections. We'll get that from you after. Thanks, Dave.
Is that the mark of success? What are you setting down as a marker for success?
Well, we've been pretty clear about the uphill battle that we face in all of these ridings. There's a reason why Mr. Prentice took so long to be able to choose his own constituency as well as the others. These are supposed to be PC strongholds. We lost the White Mud riding by, I believe, close to 9,000 votes in the last election. I believe that we were 7,000 or 8,000 votes behind in Calgary Elbow. I think we were 3,000 votes behind in this riding and about the same behind in Calgary West. So the story will be if the PCs lose any of them, quite frankly, because these are 4 ridings that have historically gone nothing but PC. I would say that Albertans have a huge opportunity to send the PCs a message that 2.5 years of mismanagement and misbehavior don't get erased by 2 weeks of announcements. So that's the reason why we're going to be fighting everyone. We're going to be fighting them to win them, but we're under no illusions that these are PC strongholds. I would say that that's a question for Mr. Prentice on October 28th. If he loses a single one of them, I would say that that is actually a judgment of his leadership. Any other questions?
Can you talk about how difficult it is to run against the
Well, you know, from the response at the doors, people want to change. And I think that it's absolutely an opportunity for change, for some new energy, new ideas, new focus, and some enthusiasm. I think that it's time, and people want to send a message to the PCs. And I have that enthusiasm, and I think that my skills and my variety of skills and training and experience translate really, really well to government. And it is a noble cause, and I think it's worthy, and it's worthy of me coming from retirement to do this as well. That's very possible, absolutely.
What was your reaction when you got the news?
My reaction? Well, I was excited. I was really excited. You know, I play some sports and I follow some competitive sports as well. And high-level competitors always say, you know, the tougher the competitor, the better you get. So that's what I'm looking at. This is a great race to win, and I think that we really can do it.
Danielle, I just wanted to ask you about one of the other races on this.
Sure.
You folks are obviously targeting Mr. Dirks over his tenure as the CBE chair. Is his record in relation to his religious views, is that going to be something that your candidates are going to be raising in this race? Because there are candidates in the race who are raising that focus.
I would say that Mr. Dirks has to answer for his own statements in the past, and as does Mr. Prentice. What we are most concerned about with Mr. Dirks' candidacy is that he's in charge of a $5 billion budget without having an elected mandate. The fact that we're going to have now a full month where he's distracted from the important issues of education while he tries to win a seat in the legislature. We're also very concerned about the fact that he prioritized putting an administrative building over the need to build schools. By our calculation, the cost of that administrative building would have built 24 schools. And we know that all over Calgary, we have dire need to be able to build, to be able to keep up with growth. So he's going to have to answer for his record on that, sure, but he's going to have to answer as well for the entire record of the PC party and the PC government that he's chosen to run for. Any other questions on? All right, I'll go back to yours. Well, I have to say, we knew that the Auditor General was investigating the sole source contract to Navigator, the group that's running Jim Prentice's campaign and ran his leadership campaign. And I have to say the results of that Auditor General's report are pretty damning. The fact that 2 government departments refused to sign off on the contract, the fact that they didn't give regular reporting on a weekly basis of their work, the fact that when they got hired for a second sole source contract for a focus group, it was almost double the cost of what other groups would charge. So this is an example of how the PCs take care of their friends. The Navigator helps premiers win elections, and in return, taxpayers end up forking over money to support them with sole source contracts. I would say that Jim Prentice should distance himself from this group. He should fire them and announce that he's not going to have any kind of special treatment for individuals who worked on his campaign. I think he's demonstrated that he says one thing and does another. He talks a lot about ending issues of entitlement, and yet he promoted 2 of his friends to patronage posts, and then he chose 2 of his friends to be cabinet ministers without an elected mandate. And now we have the fact that this group, Navigator, is the subject of a very damning Auditor General's report about how they appear to have not kept a good record of the work that they were doing for government. So he's going to have to answer for that.
Could you elaborate on your role in the Prentice leadership campaign?
I mean, you can see for yourself. They're actually hosting an event in Toronto talking about how they won the Jim Prentice leadership campaign. I'd be happy to have Vitor send you the invitation in case you're interested in pursuing it. Then you can get all the information firsthand from them themselves.
So what does it tell Albertans if Jim Prentice doesn't distance himself from Navigator?
I think what it shows is that that Jim Prentice's conversations about ending entitlements are just more words. I mean, we know that this is a premier who has a very long history with the Progressive Conservative Party, and that he has in the past engaged in exactly the same kind of behavior that his predecessor is in trouble for. So the fact that you have a situation where you've got a premier who has no problem taking care of his friends with taxpayer dollars is something that he's going to have to answer for during this campaign. And the Navigator contract is just, and the Navigator group and their ongoing ability to secure sole source contracts from this government. This is only one portion of the total amount of money they've been able to secure over the years, is a black eye, not only on the PC government, but on Jim Prentice himself.
Why is it a black eye on Mr. Prentice when he was not actually in government when these contracts were?
Well, I have to say, anytime that you have a company that two government departments refuse to sign off on their work, and it has to go back to Executive Council 3 days before the contract term has come up because they didn't actually keep track of the work that they were doing the way they were supposed to, I would say that kind of sloppy accounting and that kind of sloppy practice is something that if you're going to choose to hire them again to run your campaign, then you have to wear the fact that they appear to have received a sole source contract that the Auditor General finds was not executed in the way it should have been. So I think that is. Well, I have to wonder what the quid pro quo is. We know that Navigator has a history. Their history is they work on political campaigns, and then they get sole source contracts, or they set up shop and they act as consultants selling access to those who are in positions of power. This is the game that the PCs play about how they take care of their friends, and this is what people are just sick to death of. The fact that we have a revolving door of partisans who work on political campaigns and then either get parachuted into political appointment positions or parachuted into the bureaucracy. And then when an election comes up, they come back out again and work on a political campaign, or they become a consultant, or they get sole source contracts. This is endemic to the problem of the PC party. The fact that they take care of themselves and they take care of their friends with taxpayer dollars, and the fact that Navigator is right at the center of Jim Prentice's PC leadership in this election campaign suggests to me we're going to see more of the same. So yeah, he's got to answer for it. All right, folks, thanks very much for coming out today.